Okay, all in favor? Great. Affaires découlant des réunions précédentes.
Business arising from previous meetings. Would anyone like to raise a particular issue having to do with the previous meeting? No? Can we move on to the next topic then? Okie doke.
Borne de recharge.
Now we're on electric vehicle charging stations pay-per-use activation. And I'd like to call on Mr. Ticker to make a presentation. Please go ahead.
Alors, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Consideration of the Board on a proposal to enable a pay-per-use model for electric vehicle charging station and to outline key next steps should the proposal be approved by the Board. À ce jour,
to date, in collaboration with our partners at Public Services and Procurement Canada, we have 31 electric vehicle charging stations level 2 available for holders of special licenses issued by the parking services of the House of Commons. For the time being, the electric vehicle charging stations are configured such that Public Services and Procurement Canada will assume the costs.
Costing model will be composed of two types of charges. The first part is related to the cost of charging itself, and the second part will begin once the charging period is over and an idling period starts. The idling fee will be time-based and is common in the industry. It aims at incentivizing users to move their vehicle once the charging portion is complete, and its purpose is ensuring fair and equitable use of the charging station shared between all permit holders. As of today, there is sufficient number of charging stations in relation to permit holders, but we anticipate the demand to consistently grow in the coming years. Working in partnership with Public Services and Procurement Canada, we continuously monitor the utilization and evaluate the need to add additional charging stations in due time when required. À quoi ressemblerait un système?
So what will this pay-per-use activation system look like? A pay-per-use activation system will be put in place using the existing electric vehicle charging stations and by a third-party app that will be managed by Public Services and Procurement Canada. And that app will require that members and staff create an account with the provider that will be tied to their personal credit card or other payment options on their mobile device. And the House of Commons parking services will continue to manage the electric vehicle charging stations and the cards required for their use in the parliamentary precinct.
If approved by the Board, 1. The House Administration would continue to work in partnership with Public Service and Procurement Canada to determine proposed pay-per-use rates, which would be brought back to the Board for approval prior to implementation. 2. Public Services and Procurement Canada would reconfigure existing electrical charging stations to support a pay-per-use model and enable the background work required to ensure the third-party application would function properly. This step would not impact the current model in place today, as users would still be able to use the charging station with the card provided. 3. A trial period would start in May with a small group of existing permit holders from all parties and a limited amount of electric charging station where feedback and adjustments would be made to ensure readiness for a proposed general launch of the pay-per-use model in June 2024. And finally, a communication plan and the associated support process will be developed to support the general launch. This concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer questions and concerns. Merci.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments?
Monsieur McKinnon.
Mr. McKinnon, we are in favour of this kind of system. And of course, it's fair that everyone pays. And I'm also in agreement with the idling fees. It's an incentive for folks to unplug their cars so that others can take advantage of the very same infrastructure. So that suits us. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Ms. de Bellefeuille. Mr. Chairperson, we also agree with the proposal. I just have a couple of questions, if I may. Could you please elaborate on how you're going to manage the transition process? During our preparation, you said that there were 46 members who have an electric vehicle. There are 18 spots, charging stations, 21, I stand corrected. So that's going to be problematic, isn't it, in terms of management? Of course, members will have to relocate their vehicles. Oftentimes, we're in the middle of a speech in the House of Commons, so that's a bit of a logistical issue. And the way you've gone about this, I gather, is that members will get a notification that their vehicle has been charged and they have to move it. Otherwise, there'll be an additional charges levied against them. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. The app will inform the user that the charging period is over. And then there is an idling period which would start as of that moment, and the fees would start to be charged as of then. Are you going to have super powerful charging stations so that our cars can be charged very quickly before we leave for our ridings? Well, we're in discussions with our partners at Public Service and Procurement Canada to determine what electrical capacity is available for Type 3 charging, and we're assessing that capability for the future. Well, that would be very useful for members who have to leave for their ridings and are going to charge their cars just before leaving and before visiting the next charging station en route. So thank you for explaining that. Could you now talk about your timetable? What are your projections in that regard so that we can inform members who have electric vehicles? Thank you very much. It'd be my pleasure. Well, the initial period would be start in May, and existing licence holders would volunteer as part of a pilot project, in a sense, to provide input and feedback on the new model in order to make necessary adjustments and tweaks so that we can launch the service fully as of June. So, i.e. during the current parliamentary session. I see, perfect. So as whips, we should be receiving adequate information so that we can properly inform members of our caucus. Is that correct? Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Belfay. Mr. Julian, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And I also fully support this proposal, and I'd like to thank you for making it today. It makes a lot of good sense. Now, Mr. Dicker, you intimated that it would involve Type 3 charging. How much time would it take to fully charge an electric vehicle using Type 3 charging? Well, in the parliamentary precinct, we currently only have Type 2 charging devices. So evidently, the charging time frame will depend on the environmental conditions and also the kind of vehicle, make and model. So there are a number of variables. Some could take 4 hours, some could take up to 10 hours. But with the Type 3 charging station, which is a super charging device, the full charging might take about 26 minutes to 60 minutes. Thank you very much. It's an excellent proposal, and I support it.
Super, je pense qu'il y a...
Excellent. I think that we have a consensus around the table to endorse this proposal. Are there any naysayers? Does everyone approve the proposal being put forward by Mr. Dicker? Hats off. Thank you very much. Approved.
Move to in-camera session. Alors, je voulais dire huis clos.
I was wanting to say in camera.
Remaining item on our agenda.